Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we're going to dive into the absolute bedrock of the modern internet, HTML5. And this isn't just for coders. This is about understanding the very skeleton that holds up the dynamic, interactive web we use every single day. It's what turned the internet from static documents into the full-blown applications we can't live without. So let's get into it.
All right, so here's our game plan. We're going to start with the basics, what HTML5 actually is. Then we'll see how it lets us build much smarter, more meaningful web pages. After that, we'll talk about how it totally fixed the mess of online media. We'll explore its awesome graphic capabilities, check out its supercharged forms, and then wrap it all up by looking at how HTML5 really kicked off a whole new era for the web.
So first things first, what is HTML5 really? You gotta understand, this wasn't just another small update. It was a complete revolution in thinking about what a web page could do, all driven by our demand for a richer, more app-like experience online. At its heart, yeah, it's the official standard for how we build websites today. It's the native language that all modern browsers are designed to speak. And, super importantly, it was built to leave behind the old, clunky limitations of HTML4 and the super strict, often frustrating rules of XHTML. Okay, but here's where it gets really interesting. HTML5 is so much more than just a bunch of new tags. You should think of it as a whole platform. It's this powerful trio of new HTML features, combined with CSS3 for all the cool styling, and a ton of JavaScript APIs that make things interactive. This combination is what lets developers build things that feel less like documents and more like actual software right inside your browser. And this whole thing didn't just happen by accident. It was this huge collaboration between two major groups. You had the W3C, which thinks about the big picture web standards, and then you had the WHOTGG, which was a group of folks from the browser companies focused on, what actually works in the real world. That mix of big ideas and practical, on-the-ground know-how is what made HTML5 such a massive success. Okay, so if you want to build a modern web app, you need a solid blueprint, right? And that's exactly where HTML5 started, by giving the structure of a web page real, actual meaning. This image just says it all. Before HTML5, a web page was basically just a big pile of generic boxes called div tags. It was like a jumble of bricks. But HTML5 gave us semantic elements. Now it's like building a house. The header is the roof, the nav is the hallway, an article is a room. Each piece has a clear purpose, which is a huge deal for browsers, search engines, and of course, other developers trying to read your code. And each of these tags has a specific job. Header is for your titles and intros. Nav is for your main menu. Article is for a self-contained blog post or news story. Now, this isn't just about being tidy. It has massive real-world benefits for things like accessibility, letting screen readers understand the layout of a page, and for SEO, because Google can now figure out what the most important parts of your content are. All right, so we've got a smarter structure, but how do we fill it with all the cool stuff we want, like video and audio? This brings us to one of the biggest nightmares of the old web, media. For what felt like forever, we were trapped using clunky, insecure plugins. HTML5 came along and just fixed it. I mean, seriously, who remembers this? That constant pop-up, you need to install Flash Player to view this content. Ugh, it was awful. It was a barrier for users, it was slow, and it was a huge security risk. The web desperately needed a native, built-in solution. And the solution was just beautifully simple. 2 new tags, audio and video. That's it. This was an absolute game changer. It made media a first-class citizen on the web. This is the change that directly made streaming on platforms like YouTube and Netflix possible, right in your browser, no plugins needed. And the best part? These tags came with simple, powerful attributes. You just add a single word, like controls or autoplay or a loop, and it just works. This gave developers instant, standardized control over how media plays, something that used to be incredibly complicated to do. So, HTML5 freed us from plugins for audio and video, which was amazing. But what about creating dynamic visuals and animations from scratch? Well, that's where 2 other powerful technologies come into play, Canvas and SVG. These let us literally draw right on the web page. Here you can see the two approaches in action. On the left, that smiley face is drawn with Canvas. It's basically a grid of pixels that you control with JavaScript. Think of it like a digital painting. But on the right, that circle is made with SVG. It's not pixels, it's a mathematical description of a shape. It's more like a blueprint. And this one difference, painting with pixels versus drawing a blueprint, changes everything. And this table breaks it down perfectly. Because SVG is a vector-based blueprint, its scalability is incredible. You can blow it up to the size of a building, and the edges will still be perfectly sharp. It's amazing for logos, icons, and charts. Canvas, on the other hand, is pixel-based, so it gets blurry if you stretch it. But that direct control over every single pixel makes it blazing fast, which is why it's perfect for things like browser-based games and complex animations. So we've gone from structure to media to graphics, all making the web feel more like a real application. But a huge part of any application is getting input from the user. And that meant completely reinventing one of the oldest, creakiest parts of the web, forms. HTML5 brought in all these new form elements that did jobs that used to require tons of complicated JavaScript. Suddenly, with data list, you get native autocomplete suggestions. With progress, you get a built-in status bar. With meter, you can show things like disk space or password strength. All of this is now baked right into the browser, totally standard. And here's a perfect example of that simplicity. Look at that progress bar. That is created with a single, simple HTML tag. Before HTML5, that would have been a tangled mess of divs and custom scripts. Now, it's just one line of code. It's simple, it's accessible, and it makes for a much, much better user experience. Okay, let's zoom out for a second and look at the big picture. All of these incredible features, the smart structure, the native media, the graphics, the better forms, they weren't just a random list of cool new toys. They were all part of a huge philosophical shift in how the web itself should be built. This timeline really tells the story. We had the early standards, then we got to HTML4, but then came XHTML, which tried to make the web follow these super strict, unforgiving rules based on XML. If you made one tiny little mistake, like forgetting to close a tag, your entire page would just break. HTML5 was a rebellion against that rigid, fragile way of thinking. And this quote is the absolute key to understanding HTML5. The goal wasn't to punish developers for making small mistakes. The goal was to be pragmatic, to be practical. It was designed to standardize how browsers already handled common errors and to create a standard that was tough and resilient, one that wouldn't break easily. It was about keeping the web working for everyone. So there you have it. We've seen how HTML5 gave us a web that's smarter, way more capable, and a lot more resilient. It's the foundation that literally every modern website and web app you use is built on. It's the toolkit for the future. So the only real question left is, what are you going to build with it? Thanks for joining me.